Germany is not just castles, sausages, or beer. Behind the postcard image lies another Germany, a place stitched together from strange coincidences, forgotten customs, quiet tragedies, and moments so improbable they feel like fiction. Look closely, and the country reveals itself not through grand monuments, but through the small, almost invisible stories scattered across centuries. Stories that lived in archives, echoed in legends, or flickered through recent news. Here are 10 of them, 10 hidden fragments of a nation's memory. Each one is a doorway into a world you were never meant to notice. But once you step through, you cannot look away. 1. The alley that swallowed time. In the town of Reutlingen, there's a street so narrow that two people can't pass side by side, just 31 centimeters wide. It was born from fire. In 1727, flames devoured most of the town, and when the smoke cleared, builders squeezed one last passage between the surviving walls. A century later, a woman named Anna, 8 months pregnant, tried to cross it, carrying groceries. She got stuck halfway. Neighbors fetched butter from the market, greased her arms and hips, and pulled her out with ropes. Generations retold the story. In 1950, a drunk soldier tried the same alley after celebrating his discharge. Firefighters arrived with saws. They freed him, and Reutlingen laughed for weeks. Today, 10,000 tourists a year walk that tiny corridor. In 2022, one man with a 50-centimeter waist filmed himself trapped for 22 minutes. 3 million people watched him on TikTok. The city measures the width every year, and it grows wider by 1/10 of a millimeter. Slowly, nature itself is freeing the alley. 2. The law that forgave escape. After World War II, Germany rewrote its laws from scratch. In Article 2 of the new Basic Law, one sentence changed everything. The pursuit of freedom is an innate human right. That means escaping prison isn't a crime, as long as no one gets hurt. In 1952, a man tied bedsheets into a rope and dug with a spoon. Police caught him later, but the court added no extra time. He just finished his original sentence. Decades later, a father named Marcus used dental floss to pick 2 locks, left the prison, and spent 11 quiet days with his daughter, making breakfast, walking her to school, pretending life was normal. When police found him, they didn't punish him for escaping. Because in Germany, the desire to be free is not a sin. 3. The day the nobles drowned in filth. Erfurt, 1184. The summer heat clung to the stone walls of the royal palace. Inside, 60 noblemen gathered, gold chains gleaming, swords at their sides, voices rising in a heated argument over land and taxes. Above them, King Henry VI sat on a high chair, watching his court swell with pride and perfume. But beneath their polished boots, the wooden floor groaned. For decades, waste pipes had leaked beneath the hall, rotting the beams from the inside. The nobles didn't know it, but the ground beneath their wealth was already decaying. A single crack split the air, then another. Someone laughed nervously until the world fell away. The floor gave out, and 60 men plunged 5 meters down straight into a pit of human waste. Armor filled with filth, silk turned black. The smell was unbearable. 50 drowned before they could scream. King Henry clung to a window bar for 2 hours, his royal robes dripping in sewage. When rescuers finally pulled him up, he was pale as marble. For centuries, the palace stood abandoned. Locals called it cursed. When archaeologists unearthed the site in 2023, they found bones fused with coins, wedding rings, and jeweled buttons. The remains of power sunk, swallowed, and silent. 4. The desert born from fire. Drive an hour southeast of Berlin, and the forest disappears. The trees fade into a vast, lifeless desert, the Liberosa Wüste. 5 square kilometers of pure sand shimmer under the sun, where once stood thick pines and green moss. During the Cold War, This land belonged to the Soviet Army. Tanks thundered across it day and night, crushing roots, compacting the soil, turning life into dust. Then came the summer of 1992. A single spark no one knows from where ignited a wildfire that raged for 3 weeks. Temperatures soared past 1,200 degrees Celsius. Birds vanished mid-flight. Trees exploded into vapor. Even the ground's microbes died. When the fire ended, nothing remained. Not soil, not seeds, just scorched sand that glittered like glass. Today, it's a nature reserve where nothing grows. The wind sculpts dunes that move 10 centimeters a year, like time itself crawling forward. Visitors whisper, "It looks like Mars." In 2024, a film crew came to shoot a post-apocalyptic movie. They brought props, smoke machines, filters, and ended up using none of them. Reality was already more cinematic than fiction. 5. The Kingdom of Tea. In East Frisia, the rhythm of life follows the sound of a teaspoon tapping porcelain. Every person drinks around 11 cups of tea a day, more than anywhere on Earth. The ritual is ancient and exact. First, strong black tea. Then a drop of cream, it floats, forming a pale cloud that drifts like mist. Finally, a lump of rock sugar, it cracks with a sharp, musical sound. You never stir. You simply watch the layers swirl together, like watching weather in a cup. In 1892, a Dutch cargo ship crashed off the coast. Waves split its hull and spilled crates of tea across the sea. For weeks, villagers rowed out in small boats, collecting the treasure from the foam. They stored it in barns and drank it for years. UNESCO declared East Frisian tea culture an intangible world heritage. A 92-year-old woman named Greta still brews her pot every morning, refilling it 25 times a day. When she dies, she says she wants to be buried with her teacup so I can keep the conversation going. 6. The word that broke the pen. Germany doesn't fear long words, it builds them like cathedrals. The longest official one, written in 1872, stretches 79 letters. Donner am Schifffahrts Elektrizitätenhauptbetriebswerkbauunterbietengeschäft. It described an association of junior officials at the Danube Steamboat Electrical Services headquarters, and it nearly broke the clerk who had to write it. He spent 3 hours with a quill, dipping it again and again. Twice, the ink ran dry before he reached the end. When he finally finished, his hand trembled. The document still lies preserved in Bonn's archives, the sentence, "as long as a breath of history." Today, the word lives on. Mugs, shirts, and memes. In 2023, a rapper filmed himself trying to say it in one breath. He stopped at letter 42, gasping for air. 5 million people watched him fail and still called him a legend. 7. The Cone of Dreams. The first day of school in Germany isn't about lessons, it's about wonder. Children wake to find a towering cone, wrapped in bright paper and ribbons, called a Schultüte. Inside, candy, crayons, toys, and dreams of what's to come. The tradition began around 1,810 inches Saxony, when parents hid cones in trees. They told children that the school tree would bloom only when they were ready to grow. In 2024, a father in Berlin built a 3-meter cone, filled it with treats, and used a crane to lift it through the second-floor window. When his daughter saw it swing through the sky, her laughter made the neighbors stop what they were doing. In that moment, school didn't seem scary at all. 8. The drink of wartime fantasy. In 1940, war severed Germany's access to Coca-Cola syrup. Factories went silent. The manager, Max Keith, refused to give up. He gathered apple scraps from cider mills, whey from cheese production, and a spark of imagination. He called the new drink Fanta, short for fantasy. It tasted of orange and survival. Workers shared it in air raid shelters, as bombs fell outside. By 1943, 3 million bottles rolled off the lines. After the war, Coca-Cola headquarters bought the recipe back for $1. Today, 2 billion bottles of Fanta are sold each year, proof that even in destruction, creativity can taste sweet. 9. The man who invented happiness. Bonn. Hans Riegel stirs sugar in a copper kettle. His kitchen smells like heaven. He pours the hot syrup onto a marble slab, cuts it into small bear shapes, and names them Haribo, short for Hans Riegel Bonn. The bears were chewy, joyful, and impossible not to smile at. By 1930, Haribo had 100 workers. A century later, 100 million gummy bears a day. 10 tons of gelatin every 24 hours. The first copper kettle still gleams in the Haribo Museum. Next to it stands a bear taller than a giraffe, a monument to the man who turned sugar into happiness. 10. The beer that saved the faithful. In medieval Bavaria, monks faced Lent with empty stomachs and full barrels. Solid food was forbidden, but beer wasn't. So they brewed something so thick and strong it was called liquid bread. According to records from the 1700s, one monk drank 5 liters a day and lived to 97. Beer wasn't just a drink. It was sustenance, ritual, prayer. Today, Germany holds over 1,500 breweries each, still guided by the 1516 Beer Purity Law, the oldest food regulation in the world. Every Oktoberfest, Munich pours 7 million liters, enough to fill 1.5 Olympic pools. But the soul of the brew still belongs to those monks who found salvation in a mug. Narrow passages of history where entire worlds hide behind a single detail, an alley too tight for breath, a word long enough to outlive its writer, a cup of tea, a spark of fire, a rule that reshaped a life. 10 moments, threads woven into the same quiet tapestry called Germany. And somewhere between them, you begin to understand. The soul of a country doesn't live in its postcards. It lives in the ordinary, in the strange, in the stories whispered rather than shouted. If you enjoyed these 10 hidden stories, let me know. Write in the comments which country you want to explore next. The world is full of secrets, and we're just getting started. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next journey. There are many more stories waiting to be told.